Taylor Swift, the fearless queen of angsty bops, is back on top of the charts. In about the same time it took for other songstresses to have a kid, Taylor has now released not one, not two, but 3 albums that have debuted at number 1. It's an almost unbelievable feat, but if you ask any Swiftie, they'll tell you that when it comes to her success, her songs speak for themselves. So, let's have a listen. Wait a minute. This sounds so familiar. Hold up, wait, this sounds exactly like her. Okay, quick question. Why is Tay-Tay re-releasing old music? You may think it's an effort to squeeze more money out of old material, but the reality is a bit more delicate. But before we dive into yet another controversy with T-Swift at the center of it, we gotta take a look at how the music industry actually works. Let's say you dream up the next big hit, but how do we get our song from swimming around in your head to bumping out of every speaker in the world? Chances are you've gotta do 2 things. First off, you gotta write stuff out and fill that blank space with lyrics, music notes, key changes, chord progressions, anything that contributes to the structure of the song. This is what's called a composition. Then you gotta perform it. And unless you plan on cloning yourself, you gotta record that performance. That recording that everyone's shaking their jelly to is what the music industry calls a master. Every song that you've ever listened to is copyrighted in these 2 ways. The songwriter is the person who'd initially own the copyright to a song's composition. And as artists know all too well, the record label is typically who owns the master, and the person who performs the song in that master is the recording artist. When it comes to most pop songs, the recording artist and the songwriter are different people, but in Tay-Tay's case, it's the same person, and that matters. Nowadays, social media makes it easy for artists to share their music directly, but back when Taylor was first starting out, a musician's wildest dreams were pretty much only possible through a record label. And in Tay-Tay's case, that label was Big Machine Records, a label that signed other notable country artists like Tim McGraw, Rascal Flatts, and Reba McEntire. Big Machine was Taylor's label when she released the 6 albums that took her from rising country star
He's a reason there's a glow in a big old city
to the pop diva you've no doubt heard of by now. This meant that the Mr. Perfectly Fine in charge of her mega hit recordings was this guy, Big Machine founder Scott Borchetta. That was until one cruel summer in 2019 when it was announced that Big Machine and Taylor Swift's catalog of masters had been acquired by this guy, music entrepreneur and the reason for the teardrops on my guitar, Scooter Braun. What's unclear is why anyone in their right mind would go by the name Scooter. What the f*** are you, a Muppet? What is clear is that Scooter and Taylor have some bad blood, which she laid out in a post on Tumblr. "This is my worst case scenario," she said. "Anytime Scott Borchetta has heard the word Scooter Braun escape my lips, it was when I was either crying or trying not to." The question of whether Scooter is a bad guy or not really depends on who you ask. Artists like Taylor, Iggy Azalea, Halsey, and Todrick Hall have weighed in basically saying, "I knew you were trouble." Meanwhile, clients of Scott like Demi Lovato and Justin Bieber have called him, quote, "a good man." But no matter your opinions on the guy, it is true that he's managed people who have been pretty mean to Taylor.
Yo, Taylor.
Mainly,
I'm gonna let you finish.
that guy. So yeah, to make a very,
I think this is a really cool thing to have.
very
It's like a compliment, kind of.
long story short,
I'm always gonna respect you.
after having her name dragged through the mud, Taylor's back catalog was now owned by the same guy who managed her #1 antagonist. Plus, she claims to have found out about the news along with everyone else. And, to make matters worse, she had already tried to say to her old songs, "You belong with me." "For years I asked, pleaded for a chance to own my work," she said. "Instead, I was given an opportunity to sign back up to Big Machine Records and earn 1 album back at a time, 1 for every new one I turned in." As is the case with most high-profile controversies, the actual details are fuzzy and disputed, but what we do know is, the sale went for $300 million to someone that Taylor does not like. And not only did she not approve of the sale, she got exactly $0 from it. But hey, so it goes, right? Well, apparently Taylor wasn't going to just shake it off. Lucky for her, as the primary songwriter, she still had all the compositions to her old songs. So, in an effort to stick it to the man, or men in this instance, she grabbed her cardigan, marched her happy ass back in the studio, and started recording new masters to all her golden oldies, re-releasing each of them as Taylor's version. It was a huge risk, but it apparently pays to be fearless, unless you missed the part where she topped the charts yet again with songs from over a decade ago. How's that for Better Than Revenge? So then what does this mean for Taylor and for the music industry? Well, for now, we're not quite out of the woods. Remember, she still has 5 more albums to go. This victory is just one step in changing an industry that's been around for over a century. Let's also not forget, Taylor is also one of the biggest names in social media. Anyone looking to replicate her results without that title has about as much chance as dating an actual werewolf. But this is definitely a sign that everything has changed in the music industry, in no small part because of how social media lets an artist build a direct relationship with their audience. Anyone who doesn't take advantage of that is basically in exile. Which reminds me, if there's any topic out there that's got you scratching your head and you're too scared to ask, you should totally send it our way. Tweet using the hashtag #QuickQuestion or email us at questions@brainjolt.com. Swipe up to subscribe, and remember, quick questions don't always have quick answers.